Hello, it's Chief. Long time no see. I know, it's been a while. Like the week before Christmas, I think was my last one. I took January off, and I also had some computer problems during January when my computer was gone for a couple of weeks, so I wouldn't have been able to load anything anyway. But other than that, I'm back. I'm going to try to clear up Berlin today to finish up my tour in Berlin. A lot of people like to say that, oh man, your first assignment sucks. You're going to hate it because everything that can go wrong will go wrong. Can't say that for Berlin. As far as I'm concerned, it was my best assignment. Like I told my roommate back at Gaffby, I said it was like living in an island because we were surrounded by the wall. So and of course East German and all the Soviet soldiers at that time. So I will say, the 2 years I was there, I only fired once. And that was really strange, but we went to a real nice range. It was built by the West German government, because the West German government catered to the Allied forces that were stationed in Berlin. And I don't remember if I said Berlin was unique. That's all you kept hearing. It was a unique assignment by everybody. But this range had astroturf carpeting for the prone position. They had next to it a foxhole that was circular, and it even had little footholds so you could climb in and out of it easy. Most of the other foxholes, you're generally lifting yourself out of it and putting yourself down in there because there's no handles or anything like that in American foxholes. Got to rough it. So, and this range was built so your targets kind of did that. So you had very little right or left action, and they had telephone poles up all the way down the range, so you couldn't see any other lane's targets. So you could not say, I didn't recognize my target coming up. I had a grader behind me. This wasn't electronic scoring that we went to later in the military career. So there I was in the foxhole, and back then the foxhole was foxhole supported was the first position. So put in my magazine, watch your lane, got ready, and the 50 and the 100 came up, and they were almost right directly behind one another in the angle I was in the foxhole. Fired my first bullet, bap bap. The 50 and the 100 both fell down. The only time I've heard this expression on a range. Clear one bullet out of your magazine and hand it to me, or something along that line. So pulled the charging handle back, flicked out a bullet, went off to the side, and kind of sort of handed it back to him. So ruined me for maybe scoring 40, but I only did a 38 because I missed two other targets. But if I had that extra bullet, I could have maybe done a 39. So one of my better scores in the M16, even early in my career, which is really amazing. A real nice range. And speaking of the M16, while I was in Berlin, we were fat and happy, as I call it. It was the happy days because we had like 750,000, I think, in the Army alone, if I'm not mistaken. And our battalion actually had an armorer assigned to it. That's all he did. He ran the arms room. So when you cleared, you'd go down there with your clearing papers and a $5 bill, and you cleared the your arms room, because he had nothing else to do, so he cleaned weapons. Yeah, like I said, he had nothing else to do, so it made clearing easy. And speaking of clearing, the German guest house that me and the spouse stayed at was, excellent. If anybody's ever been to a small German hotel or even a good-sized hotel, even in a major city, you know that they put out this wonderful breakfast spread, and generally is in charge of it's charged with the room, so you don't have to pay anything extra. Of course, now that's gone to the wayside. Now they're starting to charge, like last time I was in a hotel like that, they wanted like €11 to eat breakfast, and it's all you can eat. And sometimes I sit there and look, I don't think I can eat so-called €11 of food technically, but some people can. So we had a wonderful stay there, and we had very little household goods, so we were able to pack up really fast and get out of there. But while we were at household, they told us a horror story. And this family had left within like the past year. And they were staying in the same guest house we were staying at, supposedly. So they decided to do something they never had done during their tour in Berlin, and that was go to a German swap meet or swap mart, because they were several of them throughout the streets. I don't know if it was fate that led them to the particular street market, swap market they went to, but they got the shock of their life. They saw all their household goods for sale, and their photo albums had been cleaned out of the photos, so they lost all their photos, and this is before digital cameras and stuff like that, and probably the negatives had disappeared by then, so they basically lost whatever photos they had of their family and their children and everything all at once, and caused a big stink with that moving company. And of course they lost their contract with the U.S. government to send household goods out of Berlin. I'll talk more about goods traveling later on, because I'll have a couple incidents later in my career. Of course, me and my spouse didn't have much, because we both basically were living in the barracks before we got married and had to live on the economy. And so the range, household goods, and clearing. And what's really strange is the day we flew was the day of Lockerbie. And my orders for me to travel from one duty station to another duty station got delayed by a missing number out of my Social Security number. And so when they finally came up to us, because we flew out, okay, like I said, a day before Lockerbie, so we flew out December '88, and I got my orders within 7 days of December, and we were able to clear everything and get our flight. So we flew out of Berlin and got to Munich. And we got to Munich, and we're starting to look at all the boards, arrivals, departures. Okay, we're looking around the departures. We can't find our flight. Seriously. I mean, had our tickets in our hands, and we're sitting there looking around, and finally two German policemen come up, West German policemen, and they asked us what's the matter, and we're like, we can't find our flight. He says, don't worry about it, we'll get you on a flight. So we got on a flight, and it took us to Atlanta. I don't remember what our schedule was, but of course our schedule had changed because we got a later flight to get to the final destination of Denver, Colorado, where my parents were living. So we got to Atlanta and found a payphone. Remember those in airports? Payphones. Now you can't find one when you need one, because I hate phones to begin with. I don't have a cell phone. So I get on a phone, call my parents, and my mom answers the phone, and I say, "Hi, Mom, it's me." And she goes, "Oh, thank God you're alive." And I'm like, okay, I'll play. What's going on, Mom? Well, didn't they tell you? Who was supposed to tell me what, Mother? And she says, well, a plane got blown up in the air today. And that was the day of Lockerbie, so I flew the day of Lockerbie. And I said, well, Mom, they generally don't announce on other flights that, oh, by the way, a plane got blown out of the air today. I mean, that's not the kind of news you want to hear while you're, so many miles above the ocean. No land below you. Even if you had a parachute, you'd probably freeze to death on the way down. But yeah, not the kind of news you really wanted to hear. That's all my Berlin stories, but I do have one other. Years later in my career, when I became a warrant officer, I would relieve another warrant officer, and we had about a good month to work side by side because I had to learn his job. And we found out that we were in Berlin at the same time. However, I was military intelligence, he was 11 Bravo. So he had a wonderful story to tell me, and I didn't even know that we had a MOUT village, a MOUT, a military operations in urban terrain, meaning a village or a town. And he said, yeah, we went to that all the time because, you know, they were in Berlin. It's not like they could drive out into the countryside because you couldn't leave Berlin, especially with the large military force, because the Russians or the East Germans would probably think that we're invading them and cause World War III. So he said the MOUT village was right on the border of Berlin and East Germany, and he says, and he told a good story because he's sitting there. Here we are going through the buildings, you know, doing the clearing of the buildings. You know, we're throwing smoke grenades occasionally. We're throwing flash bangs just to make some noise, and they're shooting the blanks. And he said he was inside this building, and they had just cleared the building, and so they were evacuating the building. He said, I didn't know which direction I was facing, so he says, I kicked the door open to go outside, and he says, I got outside, and I spun to the left or right, don't remember which direction he said he spun to, and hugged the wall and sat with his back against the wall, and he looked over the Berlin Wall, and there was a Hein, a Soviet MiG, the MiG-25, I think that was the Hein, and he says, just looking at me. And the Hein was the one that they used to carry troops, I think, in the battle. I mean, it was a heck of a lot bigger than our Hueys that we had at that time. And he said, there I was staring down, and he says, there's these Russian pilots just looking at me and looking all the rest of the soldiers popping out. So we had a good laugh over that story, and it was quite interesting to find out, you know, you're supposed to be meeting people all the time throughout your military career that you have at other stations, but it was quite strange to hear a story of saying, oh yeah, I was there at the same time you were. And I got a story coming later on when I am finally a warrant officer. But in that case, it involves our fathers, and of course, we, following our fathers, would be at the same military base. So this is Chief out. Like I always say, thank a veteran, hug a veteran, give them the elbow bump if you can. Thank them. I mean, because freedom is not free. We all pay the price, and it's a sacrifice. So, thank a veteran. This is Chief out. So I'll see you next week.